We made our way back up to White Flower Farm for the second year in a row. Steph's high school reunion is this weekend, and so it's close by up here in Connecticut. Weirdly, a high school she didn't graduate from. She was with these people a long time and then graduated down in Raleigh, North Carolina from high school, but they invited her, so we're here to do that. And we couldn't resist coming over here to White Flower Farm again. We're filming at a few nurseries as part of this trip that you'll see in other videos. Putnam Hill Nursery you will have seen already as this one goes up, but love coming here because they trial so many plants in the ground. So that's the one thing about, I like to see they're not just buying in liners or plugs or seed or whatever. They're putting things through a little bit of a test here, make sure that they're the things that customers can, be successful with. And then they have them planted in beautiful borders and combos and that kind of thing. We're going to go through in this video and talk about some individual plants. Elliot will be in the video a little bit later to talk about White Flower Farm. And we may end up doing a second video as well with just there's so many things that we could shoot here and talk about individual plants. So we may do that as well. I'll get Steph to turn the camera around a bit here and you can see down into the garden center. So we're along the road, where White Flower Farm actually faces. So they have retail area here, a nice shopping area, parking lot over there beyond the end of what you're seeing right there. And then areas that you can walk around, large grass areas and perennial border and shrub border, some large specimen weeping trees and interesting things. A hosta border over on the other side. The hosta are in flower. Last year when we were here a little later, so the hosta had finished flowering. Some other things had quit flowering as well. So it's a lot more floriferous than it was when we were here last year. So let's jump in and talk about some plants. It's very, very breezy out here today, and we've come out into the harsh sun. So hopefully this, what we're showing will show off nicely. Last year, I think we got lucky and had a little bit of a cloudy day, which is a little easier to show some of the color. This bee balm combination, which is, I think this one's called a raspberry wine. Is that what it is? Raspberry wine combined with this phlox paniculata right here, or garden phlox. Opalescence is the name of this pink garden phlox, which has that darker color. But that combination of color is super, super striking. What you see in these perennial borders when you're here is this great combination of thinking through not only some color combinations, where there's subtle color changes as you go down into blues and pinks and other things, but you also get a space like this where the Joe Pye weed is not fully blooming yet. The Solidago will be the fall before it's in bloom, depending on the species. Some will bloom earlier than that. Large growing Solidago in the back there. Caryopteris that will typically bloom as a shrub, a shrub that will bloom in the fall. And then some much earlier flowering things in the border. So it's really staged where I don't think, no matter what time you came here from probably May until fall, there'd be something in bloom. If you back up just a second, there's a Solidago here called Golden Fleece, and you see how much smaller it is. So you can have this Solidago that was selected as a compact grower like that in the front of the border, and then one back here that's probably on its way to being 5 feet tall before it's in bloom a little later in the season. So really just incredible combinations of plants, and again, a lot of different, some of these native perennials. This Joe Pye weed was probably planted over there, and now it's popping up through this fall blooming aster here. So you see it poking up through there. So some of these things can get a little bit of a move on, but they're good at covering ground, covering soil, so you don't have a lot of weeding to do in here. We'll start at the beginning of this very long border. I don't know how long this is, 200 feet probably, something like that, to the end. We filmed in here last year, but it's a completely different set of things flowering at this time. And they do some changes in here too, so there's annual flowers in here that would have been different from last year. We're here on this breezy day, and there are grasses in this border, and wind is picking up. I was trying to wait for the wind to pick up just a little bit. So you get the movement in the grasses, and then here, when it comes up through here, you got the lower things at the front of the border, and then taller and taller things as you head toward the back, and you get that movement in this border that's really striking. So the thing we don't have a 200-foot long border at the garden in Raleigh, so we get asked sometimes about grasses, and I don't think some of these taller growing things that sway in the wind. I think wind is an important component with grasses, and having a lot of them really, makes a statement where one little grass plant doesn't make that much of a statement to me. When you have a border this long, you have this kind of space, then you can do some of these mass plantings of things that move in the wind and offer that as a garden feature, as you can see now. How these things, but they're supporting each other, right? If these were individual plants back here and they were sitting in the middle of this field, they'd be crushed to the ground potentially. But instead, this hydrangea paniculata on one side, and a weeping tree, I don't know what it was, some sort of, oh, it's a 9-bark. Oh yeah, it is a 9-bark that's not come out of dormancy very well back there, but it's holding up another side, and then a screen behind it that's kind of holding it all together here and standing up big and tall. Some beautiful smooth hydrangeas with the pink flowers on the top of those. Again, a combination of shrubs, perennials, trees. There's spirea that would pretty much had long been done blooming down in our area, that's still blooming in July up here. Nicotiana, which we don't typically use in our garden in Raleigh, but this is a plant that it's really, look how pretty that plant is, just sitting up above, moving around in the wind. There's some mullein here. This is probably the brightest thing up here. This is one of those things where something up here is going to be the brightest thing of that week, right? The thing that's going to draw you to this border. And this week it happens to be this verbascum or mullein, the common name for it. Some of the hydrangea paniculatas, they'll be much later in the season, where the smooth hydrangeas or the hydrangea arborescens are already in full bloom. And they're, one up in there. There's Ilex verticulata, or deciduous holly, up in the middle of that bed that'll have some color on it later in the season when pretty much everything is done. And another a few more grasses up in there as well. There's an Amsonia, and the interesting thing about the Amsonia up here is it will have bloomed in the spring, but then it has some of this new breeding on these, and this is Blue Star, which has become very popular. In the fall, this thing will turn yellow. This little ball that you're looking at, it's so soft textured and beautiful, will get brighter and brighter yellow. And we saw that at the Delaware garden that we filmed last year, the big native garden that was there. We happened to catch it when it was yellow like that, and it was like just beacon. And then they're going to have some things, that are going to come up, kind of on their own. The milkweed is, you only got to plant this once, and you're going to have it out here, and it's selecting a space where it can grow, and it looks great in the border. A purple smoke tree, of course. These look fresher up here than ours do. By the time you get to this point in the summer, they're not quite as fresh in our area. So we can come north and enjoy them. We got a next door neighbor that has a beautiful one, and you guys have been watching the channel for a while know we took one out at our place. But just in terms of when they flush out in the spring and then they flower, that's kind of peak time for us, because after that we don't get good fall color on them, and they look kind of beat up by the end of summer. You come up here and it still looks as fresh as when it leafed out earlier in the season. Get a variegated dogwood. This is another thing we don't see quite as much of in our area. These native dogwoods, that red twig dogwoods, yellow twig dogwoods. This is of course just a variegated version of that. Again, that we don't see, but this, with the variegation, it gives you like an extra season, right, where it looks great during the summer while it's in leaf as well, and then of course it'll lose its leaves in the fall. What else you see? Stuff that's there's a heptacodium back up in here. You see it? 7 sunflower. This is probably just a regular straight heptacodium because it's getting big back there. There's some breeding around these to make them more compact. That plant, it won't bloom until later in the summer, but it's up, if you're up here in Connecticut and you want a crepe myrtle, that's your crepe myrtle, basically. It'll bloom white in a few weeks. The buds are on them now. And then where the flower connects onto the plant, the calyx behind it will then turn bright red. And so you get this white flowering, and then it appears to be red flowering, but it's just the calyx that's left over. And then it has exfoliating bark, a lot of great qualities to Heptacodium. I've been asked several times over the years, why don't you talk about Heptacodium? We don't see them as much in Raleigh by the time we get that far south. They are growable there, and they are there, but there's not as many. You come up here, and last year in New York and around in Canada, when they were in flower in the fall, or late summer, early fall, they're just really spectacular. Thank you so much for welcoming us back up here.
My pleasure.
For those who didn't see the White Flower Farm video from last year, can you introduce yourself, Elliot?
Yeah, my name's Elliot Wadsworth. I'm the owner here at White Flower Farm. We're in Morris, Connecticut. We're a mail order nursery, primarily ornamental.
Yeah, and you do a lot of trialing, and so
Yep.
the things that you're selling, you've gone through kind of the paces of knowing that it's actually...
We want to be really hands-on,
Right.
make sure that plants are what they're supposed to be, that we like them.
Right.
And we also take feedback from customers. You know, this plant, you told me it was X, but it was Y.
Right.
This didn't work for me. This was diseased. You know, it's just a feedback loop.
Right, yeah. Oh, where it's helpful to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
that, to get that as well.
Yeah.
Are you were at Cultivate
I was at Cultivate.
last week, which is an industry show, but it's where all the flower, because it's the summer show, so all the colors there.
Yep.
Right. The January show is not as helpful with
Right.
with color. Did you see? Were you overwhelmed? There's so much stuff going on.
It was actually my first Cultivate, and it's a big show.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, it is a big show.
It was a little overwhelming. I was looking at plants. I was looking at software. I was looking at hoses.
Right. Yeah, hoses are they're the there's one in front of us
I
here.
just can't escape them.
Yeah, you can't escape them. They're never fun.
They're never good.
Of,
so
right.
if we can find a good hose, our greenhouse team will be happy.
Right.
Yeah, it was great. I saw a lot of neat plants. Saw some breeders that we work with. Saw some partners. It was fun.
Yeah, nice. Let's talk, one plant that we'll talk about while we're standing here is this hydrangea arborescens.
Yep.
What can you?
Yeah, this is a variety called Haas Halo or Haas's. I sometimes mix up that extra apostrophe.
Yeah.
It is, like you said, Jim, an arborescens type. I don't know its full backstory, but what I do know is that it's a pollinator favorite here in Connecticut.
It is, and we met this breeder down at the plant symposium who introduced this. This was the #1 arborescens at Mount Cuba, which is unusual for a named variety or cultivar. Usually when we start messing with them a little bit, you start to lose pollinators. You gain color or you gain compact habit or whatever. But this thing has...
I think if the wind was down, we would see this absolutely covered with bees, flies, wasps, you name it.
Yeah. So as you're looking out in the world, looking for hydrangea arborescens like this, which there's amazing ones with these full, crazy balls and stuff, keep this one on your list. I think it's showy enough. The foliage looks great.
Yeah.
You're putting other variegated things around it, and the bees,
they love it.
Go crazy.
Yeah.
Go crazy for this plant.
We often see the whole plant just vibrating with insect activity.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? And then again, a named variety winning over the species is kind of wild at the Mount Cuba Center trialing. So after we talked about the hoses and the water over here, we got you in. We got you into
under a sprinkler.
You have a whole row of hydrangeas here, so that
this little stretch here is relatively recent. The big stone wall to our right was sort of repaired a couple years ago, and we planted hydrangeas here in part to keep people from toppling over the wall.
Right, that would be helpful.
And of course there's a million hydrangeas to see and check out.
Oh my gosh, and that's the other thing at Cultivate or any of the shows. It's
everywhere
like
you look.
Yeah, how many new paniculatas? Picking 3 new paniculatas at everybody's space.
Yeah,
it's kind of
and for me personally, I'm not super interested in the next knee-high hydrangea, but that said, we want to see them and learn about them.
Yeah, and having them in the ground here is probably helpful to customers.
Yeah.
To be able to see in your retail setting.
To actually be able to choose the right one.
Yeah. So we talked about shipping plants. Obviously, you have a retail operation here that people can come and visit.
Yep.
This beautiful countryside of Connecticut. That's unbelievable. How beautiful it is. What's your? You have a Christmas business?
Yeah. So we have a gift business leading up to Christmas. We'll ship amaryllis bulbs and jasmine and cyclamen, winter flowering indoor plants.
Right.
We do bulb gardens where we will root and chill bulbs so that when the customer gets them, they push. Those are fun and easy. And we ship to the lower 48, so people can find us anytime.
So the combination here in your greenhouse, your actual growing operation, are there things that you're dividing and rooting, or are you buying, and then you're buying plugs in from other
Most of
places?
the majority of our annuals and edible crops are from seed.
Okay, right.
We do some perennial propagation ourselves, more from liners or cuttings.
I gotcha.
So we do maintain some stock. So it's a mixed bag.
Okay, got a mixed bag all over the place. There's a lot to keep up with.
It's a big list. It's a big list.
Yes.
We don't do much woody plant propagation, but we have about 2 acres under cover. The growing operation's pretty significant.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's kind of fun. People don't really realize that, how many different ways. I mean, if you come to a place or you're dealing with a nursery, if you're looking at, if they have 200 things or whatever they have in their list, there may be 80 different ways with which they're approaching how to grow. They're buying small. They don't graft, or they don't do they don't do things from seed. Whatever it is, it's kind of wild how the business overlaps that way.
Well, and most retailers aren't growers, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we know plants from the production point of view and from the gardener point of view, which I think is a nice merging of perspectives.
Nice, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much
for you guys.
letting us come. Steph and I are going to wander around some more.
Wonderful.
And
great to see
take a look at everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Here's that Hans Halo hydrangea that Elliot and I were talking about earlier in the video. You can see now that that it was dried off a bit. The wind has settled down a little bit. Still a bit breezy out here, but the wind has settled down. You can see the bees showing up. And they show up in numbers on this plant. They just work these flowers like crazy, but this is native hydrangea. There are a lot of honeybees on there right now, but the native bees will show up as well as the morning goes on, I'm sure. This thing just has a great habit, great flowers. Again, a lot of people don't buy lace cap hydrangeas. This is a lace cap version of a smooth hydrangea. But all of that center part of what you're looking at there is where the actual flower parts are. That's where a pollinator can get to. And those little white bracts along the outer edge are just to kind of draw them into it. But we've kind of turned them into something else in the landscape, which is great. I mean, they have a place in the garden for the full full flowered ones. But these lace cap varieties really do. The pollinators just go crazy for them, and I am perfectly happy just walking over here and looking at that. It's beautiful. A lot of roses up here. This little open area up here where the breeze stays on them, they can, keep some powdery mildew, keep some leaf spot problems off of them. They don't get as much, a lot of the things that we would have powdery mildew on at the house, I don't see a whole lot of it as up here. I think you could figure out a way to have the plants not dry out as quick, but out here in this really open field like this, they're getting dried off pretty quick in the morning, and it seems to help that phlox paniculata that's back in the back of the border back there, and other things that we kind of known suspects for the powdery mildew. All the plants seem pretty clean. Of course, there's a lot of breeding around this as well, around preventing, powdery mildew. Like if that's David, potentially, that white phlox back there, could be, I don't know. But David's one that's kind of known to be powdery mildew resistant. So if you have that issue on a lot of plants in your garden, you might want to look for some of the new breeding that where we see some resistance to those kinds of resistance to whatever issues. The Cephalanthus is in full bloom up here. This is one of our great natives. Typically grows in extremely moist conditions, and this one is thriving amongst competition here in this perennial border, which is interesting. And I'm sure they're irrigating this perennial border. Obviously, this is a garden center and a nursery, and they're trialing plants, and they want the place to look good when people come. But it would almost be hard to give that thing enough water, it seems. But man, the foliage looks great. It's performing extremely well in this border. Now, the wind is blowing almost too much to have the bees on this, but you see there's like fiber optics, pieces on here where, pollinators just come in and you'll see them working. There's one honeybee right there. Okay, now honeybees landed on that one too. You see that, how they come in and work? How they come in and work that. That's the honeybee right there, and then that's a native bee right there. They're also on that smooth hydrangea in the back there too, which is, again, kind of covered up a bit, but they can figure out how to get in there a bit as well. There's a Rudbeckia hirta variety here called Laura, and boy, this thing called us from a long way away. Look how bright and showy these are. We have not had a lot of success, and I'll have to ask before I leave, some of these new Rudbeckia hirta varieties, which is the one that we had for a couple years that came back next to the redbud back there. We're not going to remember it right now, but that was a Rudbeckia. It came back a couple times, but it was a little smaller each time it came back. Cherokee Sun? Was it Cherokee something?
Cherokee something.
I can't remember. Of course, I'm, turn on the camera and then start trying to remember things. That's not a good idea, is it? That's not a good formula for success. But we have not had these return, but as an annual, how could you beat that? So I'd almost think about buying this as an annual. You'll see these in very decorative containers. There's a bunch of breeding around this. Sunbeckias. They're at the show in Ohio I was at last week. There were a lot of breeding around this in oranges and yellows and yellow and orange combinations and all kinds of things. This Heliopsis back here, this one's called Burning Hearts, but really looks a lot like a dahlia. Has that kind of structure of a dahlia, but that Heliopsis is, I think, false sunflower. Is that the common name for that Heliopsis? I can't remember. Yeah, false sunflower, I think is what it is. But another one, fantastic for pollinators. And look how you get that bright yellow flower on that Sunbeckia, and then that dark foliage with that darker flower on that. Look at that. Look how good that combo is right there. And again, everything in the back of this border moving today as we're here. Really is quite striking. There are dahlias next to it. See this little white dahlia stuff? I hadn't seen yet. That's a pretty one. It's just getting started. Dahlias are it's July up here. Our dahlias in Raleigh are head high or taller, are larger growing dahlias. There are dahlias now that, will stay much smaller, but our dahlias like this one, are 6 feet tall already, and up here, they're only this, but they'll still be blooming in September, probably into early October, before they actually stop blooming. Again, they'll change out some annuals on the front of this border, and this is one of the profusion zinnias. This is cherry bicolor. We've shown these off for several years now. This profusion series of zinnias are so easy from seed to do this all summer long, and no powdery mildew. We generally just don't have any issues with these. They don't need to be deadheaded. They're to me, like the perfect annual in the garden. There's some Gomphrena back here, and it's a pink Gomphrena, and you can see how well that goes with this zinnia. And then another thing that'll go with it later on, there's hibiscus back there that we've done in the past called Mahogany Splendor. And it blooms, it gets a few flowers on it, but really we just grow it for that purple foliage, which is just shocking all season long. Again, another one, we've had a cool spring. They had a cool spring up here, so I've talked about it. Even in our garden in Raleigh, annuals are a little bit behind where they normally are. But this one can be done from seed every year, and it'll be 6 feet by the end of the season. So you wonder why it's back there in the middle of the border. The combination of a cool spring and then a later spring that they would have up here has kept it there. But if you came back here in a month, just in a month, now that we're having some 90-degree days, upper 80-degree days, it'll be 5 feet tall and in full. And you'll again get a few flowers back there, but it'll be the backdrop to these other pink colors. This helianthus that's planted occasionally in the back of the border back there that just moves around in the wind is just amazing. That the yellow flowers sitting on top of it, there goes right there. Just kind of splays open occasionally. Hydrangea paniculatas, lots of them as you would expect up here. Of course up here, they're already some of them have been blooming for a while, are starting to get that pink color in them that we typically don't get in Raleigh, although there's some breeding. Around it. There's some miscanthus, Chinese miscanthus right here. And I think I heard the other day that it's now banned in, I think Delaware for sure. And I think probably will end up in a few other states as well, ultimately banned. It may not be an issue up here at all, but in some warmer areas, especially in like the Southwest, that plant can be an issue. There are so many things here. There's agastache back here blowing around in the wind. It's a light colored one. I don't know what variety. I wouldn't know what variety that is, but always worth having. There's some Rudbeckia maxima, or giant coneflowers here as well, and giant leaves. Again, they're behind ours. When we left the house, ours were 7 feet tall. These ultimately will be as well. This is a blue lime grass. This one don't see all that often. It's an interesting, really interesting, rich blue color. These are hardy in like zone 4 to 9, I think. So lots and lots of people can grow this particular one. It's like in 3 different spots along the front of this border that I've seen it, and you can see that. Look how good that blue color is. And again, it's another one when the wind comes along. Every so often. It's got this Verbena bonariensis coming up through it, another salvia with a purple foliage next to it, and so that combination of all these shades of purple and shades of blue together in one spot is really striking. Reaching the end of this border, beautiful Russian sage there, and then some autumn joy sedum, and there's been a ton of breeding in these upright sedums over the years. But it's still hard to beat autumn joy sedum when it's planted tight like this in a spot, because you get this anticipation all season long. The foliage looks great, and then it'll be much later in the summer before these start opening up, and they probably open up on nighttime temperatures, so a little earlier up here in Raleigh, a bit later in the season. But it's just kind of hard to beat. This is a spot. There's a couple weeds in there, but that's it. It's really a tight, compact growth habit there, preventing anything else from growing. But this place is it's worth a visit if you're ever up here in Connecticut, just to see it, because the trial plants combined with their permanent plantings, just is really, really striking. You can see a lot of thought goes into it. It's a long border. It's 200 feet long, but there's combos, within the border. If Steph backs up right now, you can see another one of those where this, yellows and reds, and the red flowers happen to have yellow in them. These straw flowers combined with another one of those Sunbeckias. I don't know if that's the same one that we saw earlier. There's a dahlia there with a yellow flower on it, and just that, so you just take the spots that you have available and you make a really neat, interesting combo right there. And you just drop that in occasionally. It can be purple combos, yellow combos, whatever it is. But it refreshes the border every year. And if you think you've seen it, you haven't seen it, because the next year there's going to be new plug-ins into those spaces. These globe thistles are so interesting to me. This one's called Arctic Glow. And the flowers, some of these will have more colorful flowers, but this particular one gets a little bit of a blue hue to it, as the flowers are opening, but not a whole lot. This is it's almost like this white, I think, maybe you can see it right up on the top there. Yeah. But look at the number of pollinators that are on them. And so it's just like this crazy, kind of a wicked plant. Obviously these thistles are well armed. You better wear gloves if you want to get rid of one of these. But you see the number of bees on that one. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. So I highly recommend that you take some space in your garden you know, and don't necessarily think about, you know, how colorful it is for you in the garden, and think about, you know, the things that you see. If you run into these kinds of things that have 4 bees on one just like this, and they're native bees. There's some honeybees in there mixed in too, but the amount of bees flying around that is unreal. This yarrow, which is called gold plate, it's a tall one. It would definitely be kind of a mid-border, back of the border yarrow, but look how colorful that is. You can see this across the field. Yellow is so good out here on a sunny day too. This is one of our great natives. This is rattlesnake master, and we'll see this all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Buddy Lee has it in his garden in Hammond, Louisiana, so about as hot a place as you could get in the eastern part of the country. Certainly it gets much hotter in the western part of the country, but in the eastern part of the country, Hammond, Louisiana, you know, when we were there last time, I think it was 100 every day we were there, and growing beautifully there, and now we're all the way up in middle Connecticut, and the rattlesnake master looks fantastic. Again, another one that the flower, the plant's got great structure, kind of bluish foliage, kind of grassy like growth habit to it. So I think it's pretty overall. But when those flowers open, they're not the showiest things, but you'll see bees just come from everywhere to get on, you know, and other pollinators as well. So definitely if you run into rattlesnake master, it's worth having, and pretty much everybody watching can grow it from here down to the Gulf Coast. This geranium, Roseanne, we run into this quite a bit, and it's always this showy. You can see it's come out this spring, and it's 2 feet out here onto the sidewalk already for the season. You could just, it just blooms like this non-stop. So this is another one. You're looking to fill a gap, fill a hole. Sometimes we're not going to plant things for a while, you know, and you want something to cover it up. This would be a good choice for that, just to, you know, cover some bed space, prevent some weeds, you know, cool the soil around the roots of other things. That would be a good plant for that. I think you can see in the video here, you know, last year's and this year's video, that it's just these perennial borders are the perfect combination of color and texture and height and all the different things that we could combine together to make kinds of a onesie garden, because they're not trying to trial 100 of anything. You know, they're trialing, they might do a, you know, 1 6-pack or something like that, you know, in a spot. But for the most part, this is a lot of onesies, you know, put together here so that they can trial as many plants as they can possibly trial in the season and get the most out of the space. And also people that are visiting can get the most out of it. There's a pretty interesting garden center here that you can come to and then wander the gardens. You know, this combination is pretty neat. Putnam Hill Nursery that we filmed, you will have seen the video for already, is another example of that, where you can actually, it's not just a garden center, it's also a garden, and you can get some ideas, you know, from the garden. They may not even sell those particular plants at that garden center, you know, maybe some older things, and you can get some ideas as you're visiting. I've always talked about that. Visiting places is the key to figuring out how to arrange things, you know, visually, how you want them to be arranged. Some people, there are the Ram Gibbersons of the world who have some sort of wild talent for combining textures and colors and things together just naturally. And then there's the rest of us who, you know, we stumble upon interesting things and then we copy them, right? And that's how we, that's how we get through it. But beautiful place to come, great place to visit. You know, obviously we talked to Elliot about the mail order operation that they have here as well. So thanks to him for allowing us to wander through his gardens. And again, we backed up just a few weeks earlier this year, and there's a ton more color here than there was last year. So if you can get here kind of pre-August, you know, every year, this would be kind of peak color from May to August, somewhere in there. Thank you guys for watching.